Mike, you would say that what you're doing is actually life-giving. Other people might go, this is crazy. This man is looking after 5 churches.
And the whole thing starts with the Eucharist in the middle of the river.
So we're traveling towards Marfa, Texas, riding shotgun with Mike Wallens, who has been working here in the Big Bend as a priest of the Episcopal Church for quite some time. And technically, you were called here to work part-time for St. Paul's in Marfa. Is that right?
Correct. That's when I first came here. This was the only church on my radar at the time.
And yet, the Big Bend, which by the way, I'll show a map. It's really that curved part where the Rio Grande takes that big bend in the state of Texas. It's absolutely gorgeous country, and but now you're kind of on the road a lot.
I am. I'm not sure how it happened. I think it was the Holy Spirit that sort of pushed me along, and I stumbled along and started working with churches in Alpine and Fort Stockton. Alpine, when Kay Jennings retired, who was the last person to be the vicar there, they were without a priest, and so I started coming basically twice a month, and then that's developed into once a week. And then I also go out to Fort Stockton on Sundays, and that started when there was a funeral at St. James, and Alice Dirksen, one of the leaders of St. Stephen's in Fort Stockton, said that they were without a priest because I believe it was Father Black, who was coming out of New Mexico once a month to be with them, and then he developed health conditions and eventually died, and so they were without a priest. So I said, okay, I'll come out, and so I've been going out there once a week also. So on Sundays I'm in Marfa, Alpine, and Fort Stockton, and then
well, and before we move on from that, just so that people know, it's a half an hour from Marfa to Alpine. Now, you happen to live in Alpine, so
yes.
So it's really that you drive from Alpine to Marfa. But tell us about the drive out to Fort Stockton. It's not just around the corner.
No, Fort Stockton is about an hour to 10 minutes or so from here. And the nice thing is that after the service, we always go out and eat together. So I get nourished in many different ways out there.
Yeah. And that's a wonderful church. I'll show you some pictures. It's right on the historic fort of Fort Stockton, a beautiful church that used to be the Episcopal Church in Pecos, but it was actually moved to its current location. But it is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful building. So that's 3: Marfa, Alpine, and Fort Stockton.
And so then there's a church in Terlingua. It's not owned by the Episcopal Church. It's owned by Bill Ivy, who basically owns the ghost town in Terlingua. And he is very excited to have that church used. And so I would go out once a week to Terlingua, and we started out with the Eucharist once a week, but because it's a heavily Roman Catholic congregation, and there's no Roman Catholic church out in Terlingua, they'll show up, but they won't. For a long time, none of them would receive communion because I was an Episcopal priest. And then they started, after a couple of years, I guess trust got built up, and so they started receiving. And we would do special Eucharists and prayer services around a more traditional Roman Catholic emphasis, such as Our Lady of Guadalupe. And we'd start out with the folklorical dancers in the ghost town, and then carry our statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe up to the church, and say our prayers there and recall the miracle that occurred with Our Lady. And then we also do, for example, we go in the opposite direction on Day of the Dead. We start in the church, and then we end up in the cemetery in Terlingua.
Yeah.
So we do things like that. And then we switched at the request of the people there. So we had a Eucharist once a month, and the first week, and then the second week we did the Rosary. It's the Roman Catholic Rosary. And the third week we do a Bible study. The fourth week we did a hymn sing, and both Hispanic as well as prayer, our hymnal hymns. And then on the fifth Wednesday, I'm out there on Wednesdays, we would do service work around Terlingua. And that's where we ended up at Otra Vez, which is a thrift store run by the Episcopal Church. And what we noticed were a lot of people were coming there more so than would be coming to church in the church building. And so we shifted and moved over to Terlingua. So we do Bible studies there. We'll have a Eucharist once a month there. We'll have we did Ashes to Go, La Posada. And so that's become our main focus in Terlingua. And then there's another church that Kay Jennings would go down to once a month before she retired in Lajitas. And once she retired, we started going at the request of some people there once a week. And so that's on Saturdays at 5 o'clock. And and we do baptisms in the river. You could walk down to the river from where the church is, and we just have a good time.
Yeah, so this is part of what I wanted to really help people in the church understand, because a lot of clergy have this idea that to be a parish priest means one priest, one building, and a lot of us, I think I was probably trained this way. The idea was that I'm going to look after the membership of the Episcopal Church in a particular place. It might be a small town or a larger town, but the kind of the way of being a priest would assume that I'm kind of living in the town where the church is that I serve, and I'm working with the committees of those churches and all that kind of stuff. I think, Mike, you would say that what you're doing is actually life-giving. Other people might go, this is crazy. This man is looking after 5 churches. There's between an hour or hour and a half to 2 hours in between each one. You're visiting all 5 every week. And yet it seems like it's life-giving to you. So talk about sort of the nature of priesthood, because I look at it and I think this is the way it used to be, the kind of circuit riding idea. There's time on the road. So tell us about the kind of the nature of priesthood and how your priesthood has grown and been shaped and formed by this way of being a priest and the people out here in the Big Bend.
Yeah. It's been life-changing and life-giving for me. Most of my career prior to being out here I was chaplain in Episcopal schools, and that's a pretty well-defined role in each school. And then I did some interim work, which also has a beginning and an end, and it's another well-defined role. Whereas out here, it's sort of like, now what? Who am I as a priest, and how am I supposed to be? Because there's not a clear definition. And because the people out here are so loving and kind and willing to put up with my foibles or my ideas and everything, it's helped me become certainly a better priest, but also see ways of being a priest that I never learned in seminary. And it's been very, very growth producing, and it doesn't feel wearing on me, because one of the things is to take advantage of the distances between churches allows me to be refreshed and to do some praying and to thinking, and because there's nothing else to do in between churches. So I love it out here, and I don't have a sense of being really worn out or tired. There's this rhythm out here, going from church to church and being refreshed in the car, so to speak, and then showing up, and the people are so appreciative to have a priest out here. They always are watching out for me, and if I even seem to be a little tired, they say, "Don't come out here this week. We'll say evening prayer or whatever." And then I've had both knees replaced while I've been out here, and they not only did they minister to me, they said, when you're ready, come back. We've been saying morning prayer and evening prayer all along, and we will continue to do that and make sure we pray for you.
These congregations, they're very different also, right? So like, yes. In some ways, if you're ministering in a town or an urban area, each congregation has its own kind of character and flavor. Here, the congregations are very different also, and you get to experience all of that. What are they like?
Marfa is
Marfa's a funky place.
Yes.
It is absolutely an amazing, you Google Marfa and look it up. It is an artist community. It was a ranching community. There was an Air Force base out here where during World War II, fighter pilots were trained. It is the place where the famous movie Giant was filmed. And by the way, if you haven't seen that movie, you should watch the movie Giant, and you should be aware that it was made during the 30s. And it has a very anti-racist theme that is way ahead of its time. Also, if you're interested, look up on, I think it's on Amazon Prime, a film called The Children of Giant. And it's a story about what was going on with race relations between Mexicans, Mexican Americans, and Anglo Americans here in West Texas. It's a story of the way race has unfolded in West Texas, which is a different story of colonialism and racism than many people in the United States have heard about or think about. Anyway, Marfa is this fascinating. I think my favorite burrito place in the world. Apologies to all the other places in the diocese that I go to, but Marfa Burritos is fabulous. I got the T-shirt. You go in there and there's pictures of like Matthew McConaughey is in there hanging out all the time and stuff. So like there are Hollywood premieres that happen out here in Marfa. There's the Chinati Institute, which there's a famous modern artist named Judd who came out here and bought a bunch of the old Air Force base to turn it into an art colony. So artists come out here. People like New York art dealers fly in here with their Learjets to do art shows and stuff. And then there's West Texas rancher culture. So And then of course it's right here on the border. So there's border patrol, there's immigration. It's a marvelous cultural thing. So Marfa is an interesting place.
And out here, Anglos are the minority.
Yeah,
Is a majority Hispanic area, and there's a Blackwell School also, which was a school for mostly Mexican children, but any Spanish-speaking children, because they were not allowed to go to the public school in Marfa. And that has now become a National Historic Site. Only the second one is primarily focusing on the Hispanic culture in the United States.
it's a fascinating place to come and see the Blackwell School and to learn about the way, again, race based on language, but also on culture. The cemetery in Marfa is divided by a fence. Anglos on one side, Hispanics on the other side. The railroad tracks run right through Marfa, and there was a time in which there was a color line, definitely. So a lot of the things that you would commonly associate with the difference between black and white in America were happening in West Texas, and the legacy of that is something that the Episcopal Church is very active with, thanks to you, working on doing some of that racial healing. This is a great place for a multilingual, multicultural priest to come and work, because it's a fascinating culture. But also, if you're interested in art, this is a great place to live and work. So that's Marfa. Let's talk about Alpine.
Alpine is a college town. What do you call it? The rodeo, college rodeo, was born at Sul Ross University, and it's a smaller college, but it has its history, and most of the students there, almost all of them right now, are first-time college attendees in their families. And so we do some work in helping them adjust to what life in college is like for them. And Alpine is also near the Big Bend National Park, and so there's a lot of tourists that come there. And we host concerts from Sul Ross at St. James, and it's a fun place to be, multicultural.
There's a semi-pro baseball team there.
Oh yeah.
So you got good semi-pro baseball. The Alpine Cowboys are there. I love their logo is the brand from one of the famous local ranches, the 06.
And the field, I wouldn't call it a stadium, but the field they play on is modeled after Wrigley Field in Chicago.
See, that's just fabulous. So you got good semi-pro baseball out here. You got a college town. That's Alpine.
And we also draw from Fort Davis, which is there are three towns: Marfa, Alpine, and Fort Davis, and
kind of in a triangle, right?
Right.
And they're the county seat for each of those counties. They built those towns so that the circuit riding judge could go. It's about half an hour between each of the points of the triangle. So if you imagine kind of three large Texas counties, they put the county seats within 25 miles of each other, kind of so that the circuit judge could ride the circuit, and now the circuit priest can ride the circuit too. So we got churches in Marfa, we got churches in Alpine, a church in Marfa, a church in Alpine. A lot of our people come from Fort Davis too.
Right, and we have a coalition that focuses on the border, and we meet in Alpine, but they come from Marfa, Fort Davis, and Alpine, and do a lot of work there.
All right, so let's talk about Fort Stockton. So you continue east. Fort Stockton is the easternmost church in the Diocese of the Rio Grande. And Fort Stockton, of course, is where the historic Fort Stockton was. Buffalo Soldiers coming out this direction back in the day. And Fort Stockton, our community there is a primarily ranching community.
It is. It's a big ranching community, but it also has a cultural element. There are a couple members of St. Stephen's who wanted to work to preserve the Hispanic nature of Fort Stockton. And so every year they put on what is called Barrio Fest, and they block off the town, and they have pallets with different historical things on them, so you know what you're looking at. They have car shows. They also had used to have a semi-pro ball team, and so some of the members of that team from way, way long ago are still alive, and so they have baseball games with them on Barrio Fest, and it's just an amazing thing to watch people come back from there. Even though they've moved away for Barrio Fest, they'll come back, and I'll talk with them, and they'll say, well, here's where I used to live, and here's the candy store I used to sneak out of school to attend, and things like that. And then in addition, there's a wonderful community theater that member of St. Stephen's, really, she is the head of it, Alice Dirksen, and they put on some great plays, and they receive awards for it all the time.
And they've reconditioned the theater. It's a historic theater building.
Right.
They've restored the whole thing. It's got a state-of-the-art lighting system and sound system and all that. It's a wonderful place to see a show. There's kind of a room to the side where you can have receptions, art gallery there. They have local artists that are featured, and like you say, they compete with I think it was like Oklahoma and like
Louisiana, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, and Arkansas.
And so they go every year to a one-act play competition, right. And they do really well as well. So it's an amazing, again, the diversity of interests, the blend of art and culture at Fort Stockton is amazing. They've also been involved in a local movie, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
You can find that on Amazon Prime. It's called Texas Rhapsody, and a bunch of the members of St. Stephen's are featured in the film. They helped write some of it, and it's a border story in which 3 of the characters play themselves. So I recommend that to you. But just to that theater community and Barrio Fest, in addition to the ranching culture in the community at Fort Stockton, it's amazing what they're up to. All right, let's talk about Terlingua. So they built a section of the wall in the parking lot in order to show people what it'd be like.
Yeah.
And it's ugly.
Terlingua is, and it's also it's a smaller part of Studi Butte, and they combine with one another. It's right on the entryway to the Big Bend National Park, and a lot of people work in the park from Terlingua, and it is heavily Roman Catholic. And the first time I went out there, we decided to do Marcy Reed, sort of the linchpin and the person that I work closely with out there. Her husband's the superintendent of the school there, and she teaches there. Anyways, we decided to celebrate Our Lady of Guadalupe, and they hadn't had anything out there like that. And so the first time we did it, we had 75 people, which overcrowded the little church there. and but people were crying, and they said, we haven't had anything like this in 40 years. And so it was just, that's what started the ministry that we have out there now, because we were able to tap into a way in which people's spirituality was needed, and provide something that their hearts were longing for. And so we do all things based on the Hispanic culture of the area.
It's marvelous. And just architecturally, you're right on the edge of the Big Bend National Park. There's both a state park and a New Mexico park. I mean, a Texas state park and
Right.
a national park out there. And then and there's what's called the Ghost Town, which has this beautiful old church that we get to borrow as a part of it. So people come to spend the winter out in Terlingua. It's an amazing community, but there's also a year-round community,
Right.
and you get to be a part of all that.
We do, and in the summer, it gets pretty hot, and so we do our best to meet either earlier in the day before it gets hot, or after the sun goes down, and so we have to adjust our schedules and everything. But as long as people are willing to participate and they want this to happen, we'll be there.
Yeah. And then just down the road from Terlingua is Lajitas.
Yes, Lajitas is a small town. It's one of the easy ways to cross into Mexico without being at a port of entry. It's not. It's sort of frowned upon, except for once a year, when we have this amazing festival called Voices from Both Sides.
It is amazing.
And they build stages on both sides of the river, and they alternate bands. And the whole thing starts with the Eucharist in the middle of the river. People will come, and when I first got out there and did it, not everybody received, but everybody came out and participated by saying their prayers. And then the next year, that was your first year, during your first year after your consecration as bishop here, you came out there, and I think you wore the right outfit, because
it was so powerful.
Yeah, everybody came and they thought, oh, this is the Roman Catholic bishop. So
I waited out there with full chasuble, mitre, got the croziers, and waited out in. The crozier was helpful, actually, waiting out there to where you had a raft set up like an altar floating in the middle of the river, and we celebrated the Eucharist there with the one thing that was a little sketchy was we had an amplifier, right, a battery operated amplifier floating on the raft. And I was like, man, if that thing falls in, we're gonna lose so we were amplifying the audio so everybody could hear. And then the thing about it is that as long as you're in the water, you have not technically crossed the border, and so people can come into the water from both sides, receive Eucharist from both sides, and on that day, people they do come across to buy food from each other on both sides. There's bands on both sides. It's a fiesta right there on the border. And so that's part of what happens at Lajitas. And Lajitas is also a resort. Like there's a big old golf course down there and all that, right?
Exactly. And on the property of the resort is the Chapel of Joseph and Mary. And so that's where the fifth congregation meets. And we do baptisms in the river. And it's a growing congregation. The staff from the golf resort come out, and and say their prayers with us, as well as tourists. And a lot of people will show up and they think it's a Catholic Mass. And so when I tell them I'm an Episcopal priest and explain to them that we'd love for them to receive, a lot of them do.
Yeah.
We've got people will come out there for 6 months, and we have some regulars who are Roman Catholic, and they say, well, they talked with their priest back home. Was it all right? And the priest said, look, if that's the only place you can say your prayers and receive the Eucharist, it's fine, you know. And so we're growing out there, and what's nice is Lajitas is close enough to Terlingua that people, we don't have to necessarily have the Eucharist every week on Wednesdays in Terlingua, because they can come to the Saturday service. The other nice thing is that the chapel in Lajitas is air conditioned, where the one in Terlingua is not. And in fact, St. Paul's isn't air conditioned, and neither is St. James. So we enjoy the heat.
Yeah, the diversity of the ministry that's here, the different communities that you get to work with. It's a fabulous way of being a priest, and so
It is.
It's good for clergy who like the adventure of being on the road, who enjoy nature and hiking, who enjoy different culture, particularly embracing the Hispanic culture of West Texas. It's a marvelous ministry, and I'm grateful that you're here, Mike.
Well, I'm just grateful to have the opportunity, and that God called me out here in the first place. So it's so exciting.